ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते
ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते
पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते
पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते।
ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वम्
ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं
यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
मा गृधः कस्य स्विद्धनम्
मा गृधः कस्य स्विद्धनम्
कुर्वन्नेवेह कर्माणि जिजीविषेच्छतगुं समाः
जिजीविषेच्छतगुं समाः
एवं त्वयि नान्यथेतोऽस्ति
एवं त्वयि नान्यथोऽस्ति एवं त्वयि नान्यथेतोऽस्ति
न कर्म लिप्यते नरे
न कर्म लिप्यते नरे।
असुर्यानामते
लोका
अन्धेन
तमसावृताः
तांस्ते प्रेत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये के चात्महनो जनाः अनेजदेकं मनसो जवीयो
अनेजदेकं मनसो जवीयो
नैन देवा आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत्
नैन देवा आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत्
இது சம்ஸ்கிருதத்துல இத் தத் நைன தேவா ஆப்னுவன் பூர்வமர்ஷத் தத்தாவதோன்யானத்யேதி திஷ்டத் तस्मिन्नपो मातरिश्वा दधाति वेरी गुड इनकी फिफ्थ பார்க்கலாம் तदेजति
तन्नैजति
तद्दूरे
तद्वन्तिके
तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्यास्य बाह्यतः वेरी नाइस कृष्णा இது நீ சொல்றியா ஒரு தடவை तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तद्वन्तिके दूरे तद्वन्तिके तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्यास्य बाह्यतः वेरी गुड प्रमोद ஒரு தடவை சொல்றியா
Sure enough.
Tadejati tannhaijati.
Tadejati tannaijati.
Taddure tadvantike.
Taddure tadvantike.
Tadantarasya sarvasya.
Tadantarasya sarvasya.
Tadu sarvasyasya bhahyatah.
Tadu sarvasyasya bhakyatah.
Very good. So, in the mantra is now moving on to give you it is attempting to give you a description of what this thing is that we call as Isha or consciousness or Atma, Brahman. ஏதோ ஒரு பேரை வச்சு இந்த ஒரு consciousness-க்கு there is something that we are referring to this consciousness. What is it's trying to describe it. It tried to do it in the previous mantra also, where it said anejadekam manaso javiyo nainaddeva apnuvan purvamarshad taddhavato jnanatyeti tishtat tasmin napo matarishva dadhati. Here it's trying to do a similar attempt at trying to describe what this thing is. So let's just look at the padacheda, look at the word meaning of this. Tat ejati. Ejati na, in the previous one also we saw anejat, unejat. Ejr, the root is ejr. Ejr means to move. So tat ejati means that moves. Tat na ejati, that becomes tannaijati. Na ejati, does not move. Tad dure, it is very far. Tad antike, it is very near. Tad antarasya sarvasya. Tat antaha asya sarvasya. Whatever is here, everything, it is inside of everything. Tadu, that is all. It is also sarvasyasya bhahyatah. It is also outside of everything that is here. Sarvasya asya bhahyatah. So that is what it, in terms of the meaning. So which means it says it moves, it does not move. It is far, yet it is near. It is inside, yet it is outside of everything. Okay. That's the mantra. Now, we've seen what the Upanishad is trying to do, right? From the beginning, it is trying to give you a perception, a grand perception of looking at something that is intangible, right? It is trying to constantly bring you into that recognition that there is something that is intangible, or rather, how do you say this? It's more tangible than the things that are tangible. It's actually, if you look at it from a different perspective, it is the most tangible thing. Yet it is intangible because it's not something that you can approach through your senses. That is what the previous mantra saw. Correct? Anejadekam manaso javiyo nainaddeva devaha. None of the devas can approach it. Nainaddeva apnuvan purvamarshad. Taddhavato jnanatyeti tishtat tasmin napo matarishva dadhati. It sits in one place and makes everything move. So this particular thing that it's talking about, Iśāvāsya Sarvam, the Isha, it is constantly there, it's available. It is, what we mean that it's not tangible is that it is not available or accessible to the senses. You have to withdraw your senses to be able to touch that. In Patanjali Yoga Sutras or Patanjali, the Ashtanga Yoga, there is one step, I think the fourth step is called as Pratyahara. Correct? Shiva is here. Maybe Shiva is here, should be able to confirm this. So, it's called Pratyahara. So, Pratyahara is the step where you talk about withdrawal. From Pratyahara, you go into Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. Correct? The fifth step. Oh, Shiva, you're here. Okay, great. Hari Om. Correct. So the fifth step is Pratyahara. So Pratyahara is essentially withdrawing the senses. Now what is Patanjali trying to say by withdrawing the senses? He means that when you withdraw the senses, you are actually you are now refuting the fact that the senses can reach it. If your mind thinks that I can know the self the way I know an object, then he's saying that sorry, that's not possible. Right? You have to withdraw your senses. So the sense withdrawal is what the previous mantra is also talking about. Naina deva apnuvan purvam arshad. Even before the devas can reach it, it is already present there. Which means it is all pervasive, it is always there. Now, what is this mantra trying to now show us is that I've told you that you cannot access it through the senses, yet it is the power that powers the sense organs. It powers the functionaries. These functionaries, be it functionaries within you or the functions that are happening outside, be it the physiological functions within our bodies or the functions that are happening on the outside, which is the sun shining, the rain falling, the wind blowing, the earth moving, all of that is governed by this power that is consciousness, which is Isha. Okay? So now it's trying to describe, what it is trying to do here is trying to describe what this thing is. Now how do you describe something that is being told as indescribable? Correct? When something is said as indescribable, how do you describe it? We again saw this, I think last week in one of the sessions, that you try to describe it with closest thing that you know. So if you have to describe a mango, you will, if you wanted to describe the aspect of sweetness of the mango, you will describe it the closest thing which you probably know, which is sugar or honey. If you know sugar and honey and you didn't know the taste of mango, that is how you would approach it. And that is how you usually do it. You usually try to describe an object through the means of describing something or using something else that you already know. See, even if you look at the dictionary, how is a word meaning given in dictionary? Word's meaning is given by another word which you probably would know. If you don't know that word, then you have to look for the meaning of that word. Correct? So usually the way you describe or you try to approach something is by means of what you already know. So what the Upanishad is trying to do is trying to show that this particular thing is all pervasive. This Isha that you are referring to is all pervasive. When I am saying all pervasive, then I am also trying to say that then I am trying to describe means what. So is it here? Yes, it is here. Is it there? Yes, it is there. Is it moving? Yes, it is moving. Is it not moving? No, it's not moving. It is inside? Yes, it is inside. Is it outside? Yes. So there are two things that the Upanishad is trying to do. One is it's trying to bring you to a point of apparent contradiction, apparent paradox. What happens when a paradox is introduced is the mind goes into a gentle state of shock. Okay, just follow this thing here. What are we attempting to do here in this whole process? In the process of introspection, in the process of understanding some of these truths, what are we trying to do? We are trying to bring your mind to a state of inagitation, non-agitation. Correct? What is happening right now is there are too many vrittis, there are too many modifications of the mind. Again, going back to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra's first line is Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodhaha, which means it is the cessation of Chitta Vritti, the vrittis that are there in our mind organ, the mind sense complex. There is constant vritti, there is constant movement. What we are trying to do, we are trying to bring it into a certain state of cessation. And when you bring it into a certain state of cessation, Patanjali says that is yoga. Yoga means what? The root meaning of the word is yuj. Yuj means to unite. So yoga is to unite. When can this union happen? Union happening between what? Union between the union between what you know as the individual self and the eternal consciousness. The union between this complete union between the mind, body, sense complex and the I that I am. Right? Union between the subject and the object. There are no two, non-dual. So when there is union, when there is yoga, there is advaita, there is non-dual. And when does this happen? Patanjali says yoga is essentially when there is chitta vritti nirodha. Nirodha means to stop, to cease. So vritti nirodha, the vrittis when it ceases, that is when you are in yoga. That is when you are in contemplation. That is when you are in complete meditation. Now what we are trying to do is through the Upanishadic study also we are trying to achieve that. Again, just by studying it will not come to that. We have to sit and mull over it. Right? What we understand, what we read, we have to mull over it. So, now the Upanishad is trying to put you into a shock. Think what happens when you go into a state of shock. Suppose you are walking on the road, and this happened to my brother when we were very young. My parents had taken us to Kashi, Haridwar, Rishikesh and Haridwar. And very narrow roads, narrow gully streets, very, very narrow streets. So my brother we were young. My brother is, of course, younger. He's a younger brother of mine, so he's younger to me. And I was holding my hands and walking. My parents were walking a little ahead. In that small gully, suddenly there were two cows or bulls, I don't recall vividly, but they came rushing in this direction. In the direction we were walking. People all moved on the sides, but we were small, we couldn't see it. And then my parents saw that and then they said, move. And I quickly moved and I was trying to pull him. He didn't move. He couldn't move because when he saw that huge two animals coming, he was in a state of shock. His mind didn't know what to do next. He couldn't process. Even his instincts were not able to process the next thing. He just stood still. And of course those bulls ran over him and then poor thing he got injured and then surgery lam panniyalache. But the thing is, this is what happens to us when we are encountered with some kind of shock. We don't, for a period of time, we don't know what we need to do. The mind goes into being numb. Upanishad is trying to do that in a certain way. When you go and ask the Upanishad, okay, now tell me what is this Atman, what is this Brahman, what is Isha? It's trying to explain, but at the same time it's sending your mind to a state of shock, saying that it is that also, it is this also, it is this also, it is that also, it is everywhere, it is nowhere. It's saying all of that, and then your mind gets confused and it goes into a state of bewilderment. And what happens is, when the mind goes into that state, it shuts off. And when the mind shuts off, then what is this glimpse of this Atman or Brahman or Isha that you're talking about, consciousness that you're talking about, becomes a direct experience. Right? So Upanishad is trying to, out of compassion, trying to give you a direct experience of what this is, because it cannot be presented through words. So when you read this, there will be, and if you contemplate upon it, if you spend sufficient time, the mind will go into a state of bewilderment. I'm trying to reconcile. It's here also. Okay, so it's here. It's there also. So how is it there? It is inside. It's outside. It's moving, not moving. So then you try to analyze it through the objects that you know, through the things that you know. You try to do this. The mind will reach a point of no conclusion. And typically when the mind reaches that point, it possibly will shut up. And when the mind shuts up, then there is a possibility of direct experience happening. And which is why it's called as aparoksha anubhuti. Aparoksha anubhuti means direct perception, immediate perception. Today, whatever we perceive of the world is mediate. Mediate means there is a medium. The sense organs are a medium to perceive. The perception that is spoken about is immediate. There is no medium there. When I ask you a question, are you there? You don't have to think to say, yes, I am there. Right? Of course, if you're thinking to respond to that question, means you have not heard the question. It's not that you're processing the answer. You haven't heard the question, maybe that's why you're taking time to respond. But the moment the question is understood, the answer is immediate. So, this is one thing that the Upanishad tries to do. By giving your mind conflicting, paradoxical statements, and that is why it is said that you can't use the Upanishads as it is, because there are apparent conflicting statements in it. There are apparent contradicting statements in it. You can't take it as it is. You have to apply it in various contexts. Right? In fact, YouTube, you will see how people use some of these Upanishadic statements or some of these statements to point back, Upanishadic statements to point back at our Hindu ideologies or whatever, the Sanatana Dharma ideologies and philosophies. People use some of these things to point back, because there are many apparent contradictions. So now you see that contradiction in this mantra 5, right? Tade jati, tannai jati. So we'll just look at that once again. Tad e jati, tat na e jati. Tad dure, tat antike. It moves, it doesn't move. It is far, it is near. It is inside of everything, it's outside of everything. Okay, so as I said, Upanishad at first what it's doing is this one and the previous one, mantras 4 and 5. The Upanishad is trying to put you into a state of bewilderment so that the mind shuts off by its own accord, because it now concedes defeat, saying that I can't logically make sense out of this, because I have not seen anything like this. Something that is here also, there also, not here, not there, moves, doesn't move. I haven't seen something like this. So the mind concedes defeat. When the mind concedes defeat, it goes into silence. Then you perceive through direct perception, aparoksha anubhuti. You have that direct, immediate perception of the truth. This is one way of looking at this mantra. The other way of looking at this mantra, if you go by each word or each phrase that is here, it says that this Isha or Atman or consciousness moves and it doesn't move. Tat ejati, tat na ejati. It moves, it doesn't move. How is that possible? It's possible because it is in everything, it moves with everything. Hence it moves. Like for example, this is one of Einstein's theory of relativity examples. He talks about when somebody is standing in a train and the person is standing in the train, he is static in the train. But for the person on the outside, when the train is moving, is the person moving or the person is static? According to him, the person is moving. He is moving because the train is also moving. Rather, he is also moving with the train. So by virtue of the train moving, this person is moving. Although he appears to be static inside there. Relatively, he is moving. Similarly here, because this Isha is all pervasive, all of this goes back to the first Vakya. Iśāvāsyam idam sarvam. Iśāvāsya idam sarvam. Isha is residing in everything that is here. So anything that moves, he also moves. Jagatyam jagat. Again, trace it back to that line. Jagatyam jagat. Whatever that is moving in this world, that which you called as jagat, Isha is residing. So which means everything that is moving, Isha is residing, so Isha is also moving. Hence, tat ejati. Hence he moves, hence it moves. That is the first Vakya. Second Vakya is does not move. Does not move means in absoluteness he doesn't move or it doesn't move. By the virtue of these objects moving, it appears to move, but in its own presence, it doesn't move. Like we are sitting on planet Earth. I am sitting in my house. Am I moving? Question is, I am not moving. But no, the Earth is moving at the speed of 8 times the speed of a bullet. It's moving at such rapid speed.
For people in Mars, you are moving.
Correct. For people outside of Earth, you are moving. So this particular presence, because it is everywhere, it is all pervasive, you could say it is actually not moving. Space, for instance. Is space moving? Is it going from one place to another? It is not. Space is always there. So in that sense, it doesn't move. So in one sense, because see, the important thing that it's also driving is that it's all encompassing. It is all pervasive. So for all the objects that are moving, apparently this also moves because this is present in all objects. But in its absoluteness, it doesn't move. So tat na ejati. Then it is far, tat dure, yet it is very near. One of the ways that it's explained in several commentaries is this consciousness appears to be far for those who are completely materially oriented. So if you go to a Charvaka, if you're familiar with the Charvakas are there are different philosophies in the Sanatana Dharma. They are known as the Shad Darshanas. Right? So there are Astika Darshanas, there are Nastika Darshanas. Astika is all the darshanas or philosophies that uphold Vedas as the authority. So you have Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Yoga, Sankhya, Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa. These are Shad Darshanas which hold the Vedas as their authority. So hence they are called as Astika Darshanas. Astika means Asti iti Astika. Asti means it is there. What is there? The Vedic literature is there. Vedas are there. This is Astika. Then the opposite, the other side is Nastika. Na Asti. Nastika. nasti. So there are three types of, largely, broadly if you classify, there are three: Charvakas, Jainas and Bauddhas. Then there are Ajivikas and other, whatever, the smaller. But Charvakas, Jainas and Bauddhas don't hold Vedic literature as their primary authority. In the Astika Darshanas, like Vedanta is also called as Uttara Mimamsa. Vedanta holds the Vedic literature as the highest authority, which is why you see everywhere there is a reference made to the Vedic literature. But if you go to the Bauddha, Jaina and philosophies, they don't make references to pretty much any scripture. They don't make any scripture references. So there is one, this thing called as Charvaka. Charvakas are a group of people who believe in eat, make merry, enjoy and die. So basically for them is all that your five senses offer you is what is available to you. So make the best out of it, enjoy while you can, and then die. Right? And they have their ways of explaining how things are and you know what their philosophy is. They have their ways of explaining it. Now Charvakas are completely materially oriented, and they do not perceive that there is something that is beyond the physical. They don't acknowledge it also. They'll say whatever that is there is the physical realm. That is all that is. What happens after death? Who cares? So, for the Charvakas, well, as an example, right? It's not that they're bad people or so. It's not that way. For them, that's all. Be good, do good, you get good, whatever. So they believe in that also to some extent, right? But they are, the Upanishad says, tat dure. For them, the knowledge of the self is far off. If you're so very materially oriented, because very simple, you'll recognize this even in your daily lives, right? To be able to understand something which is very subtle, you need a refined mind. Correct? See, even we've got some Carnatic musicians in our satsang. You'd know they would also recognize this. To be able to appreciate classical forms of music, you need to have a certain form of refinement within you. General music, music that activates your senses, agitates you, makes you move in a certain way, that happens to everybody. But to be able to appreciate refined forms of music, you need to have refined sensitivities, you need to have a refined mind, you need to have, your abilities should be a little more subtler to be able to appreciate and acknowledge and experience the joy from it. So same thing even with the study of the study of what you're talking about is the that consciousness which is the most subtlest of all. Mahato Mahiyan. What is that, Pramod?
Anorananiyan
Mahator Mahiyan. Which means it is the smallest of the Anu oda inno. It's smaller than the Anu, Mahanu. Right? So it is so subtle that it requires you to be able to have a certain sense of, bring in a certain sense of refinement within us. By refinement, I don't mean sophistication. I'm not talking about sophistication. Right? if I'm able to plate clean a fork spoon if I'm going to eat a dosa, that is not refinement. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about that kind of refinement. I'm talking about that is sophistication. I'm talking about refinement where you become sensitive. You become sensitive to subtler things and lesser, grosser things. So this is possible when you withdraw your senses from the material. When you, the more, okay, this is another important thing. The more that which you associate with, your consciousness becomes that more and more. Right? Like for example, if I'm thinking of the cup for a moment, I'm thinking of a cup. My whole conscious mind becomes a cup. It becomes a cup. For a moment, it becomes a cup. Now, when my mind becomes a cup, what am I? At that instant, at that moment, I am a cup actually. See, you are what you are only when you think about yourself. I am this person who's doing this is a thought that I have. When I have that thought about myself, I am that. So when a thought...
The moment you wake up, you are already identifying yourself as someone, right?
Correct.
So how do you get away from that?
Oh, that is a very small... So which is where that has become our compulsion. Our compulsive way of living is that we just give in to our thoughts so much that we become less aware of what is happening inside. So the more we become aware, the moment you wake up, the moment you're looking at something, the moment you're perceiving something, the moment as you keep running this awareness is like a constant thing that you keep running in the background. And when you're observing the world, observing your interactions, observing your emotions, everything, then the space gets created between the object and yourself. Slowly. It comes through repeated sadhana, repeated practice. Mananam, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. This cycle keeps going on and on and on. So then as you keep doing that, some amount of distance gets created. So this...
Taittiriya Upanishad Aham Vrikshasya Reriva அப்படின்னு ஒரு அனுவாக்கம் இருக்கு. கிருஷ்ணர் அதான் சொல்றாரு. You keep saying that you are, and the meaning the Aham Vrikshasya Reriva, huge tree which is of knowledge. So you keep saying that again and again, you become that.
You become that. Correct. This is how our mind processes it. So, what we mean by materially oriented is we are trying to say that if our mind is constantly thinking about something, our consciousness takes that shape and form. Right? Our mind takes that shape and form. Which is why do you think in the Sanatana Dharma, there is a creation of so many deities and forms. One of the primary, although we talk of the highest consciousness as Brahman, which is Nirguna, why is Saguna Upasana also entertained and promoted, encouraged, advised, guided by the Gurus? Is because otherwise your mind will start thinking of other objects. Now he's saying, think of this object, Narayana. Think of Mahalakshmi. Think of Durga. Think of Kali. Think of Shiva. Think of Ganapati. So what happens is the mind in Dhyanam, Kshiro, Dhanvat Pradeshe, Shuchimane Valasat Saikater Moktikanam. You are already visualizing that in Dhyanam, Sindhurarana Vigraham Trinayanam Manikyamori Spurat. You are already thinking of that form, that place where she is, he is, that space, that form, that shape. The moment you start thinking in Dhyanam, your mind becomes that. Your consciousness takes that form. And what they have done is the rishis have been able to draw a divine form. a form that evokes bhakti, that evokes a certain level of devotion. So what I'm coming to is the mind takes the form or the shape of things that you mostly associate with, or whenever you associate with something. For materially minded people, what we are saying is, when you're saying materially oriented, your mind will be focused on material things. So for such minds, tat dure, it appears very far. This tattva that you talk about, Isha, appears very far. That is what it means. Tad dure, tad antike. It is close, very near. For whom? For folks who are turned inwards. For those who turn inwards. This is what they say, right? The journey of spirituality starts from you and ends in you. Because this truth, where is it? It is the closest to you. It is the nearest to you. It is the nearest to you. You say, how long is this journey of spirituality? You can say it is very far for somebody who is not oriented. But somebody who is oriented, you can say it's very near. Ippo nadandarum. Nochur Anna in a talk, he says, if there is a very, very refined mind and a ready mind, Upanyasam Lalla, if you sit in Upanyasams, he says, just by listening to some words, your mind can go into Samadhi. Because that is your natural state. Your natural state is state of Samadhi. All you're doing is you're dropping off the paraphernalia. All the outside things you're dropping off, instantly you drop into Samadhi. So going into Samadhi is the easiest thing. Because it's the closest thing that's available to you. You don't need any other things on the outside. You need the things on the outside to create an environment so that this dropping into yourself becomes easy. So you listen to music, you listen to bhajans, you listen to Nama Sankirtanam, you sit in a beautiful environment, you sit in an environment with this clean nature, you look into hills or mountains, you look at oceans, because you're creating an environment where the mind can slowly dissolve into itself and fall into it. It's called as slipping into Samadhi. Usually that is how they refer to it as. You slip into Samadhi. When that happens, you can't go into Samadhi. You can only work on dissolving the mind slowly. As a result, you will slip into that state of Samadhi. So tad dure, tad antike, it is so near. Slipping into that is very near. Then tad antaha asya sarvasya, tadantarasya sarvasya. That means tat antaha asya sarvasya, whatever of everything that is here, it is antaha, it is inside. And tadu, tatu. Tadu means tatu, that thing is also outside of everything. Sarvasya asya bhāhyataha. It is also outside of everything. Right? This is the last here. Tat antarasya sarvasya. Tat antaha asya sarvasya. Of everything that is here, it is antaha. Tatu sarvasya asya. Sarvasyasya bhāhyataha. It is outside of everything. So, what it means, it's all pervasive. So, if somebody asks, is consciousness inside you? The answer is yes. But is it only inside you?
I am also inside the consciousness.
Correct. Because it's all pervading. It's all pervasive. It's like space. It's like space. Okay, some messages here. Why the side agree? TMK would disagree, I guess. Just kidding. Okay. I just saw some chat messages.
On a side note, I think TMK's music is very, very close to silence.
What's it? What is it? Sorry?
Well, on a side note, I personally feel TMK's music is very close to silence.
Oh, TMK is very close to silence.
Yeah.
Right. So, oh, okay. Guys are talking about TM Krishna. All right. Yeah, that's true. I also feel that. But so this particular line is, it's like space. So look at it this way. Look at it an air bubble. Look at something as a soap bubble, for instance, a water bubble or a soap bubble. Okay. What happens when a soap bubble is there? Is there space inside a soap bubble? There is space. Is there space outside? There is space. What happens when you prick the soap bubble? It bursts. What remains there is space. Where is the soap bubble gone? No more. It merged with space.
Shakespeare says our existence itself is bubble existence.
Oh, he says that, is it? Okay.
Yeah, and all the world is a stage. He refers to our this one as bubble existence.
Oh, lovely. Interesting. Shakespeare has made some very profound statements.
7 stages of life. Last, I think he says, I don't remember the exact verses, but my teacher saying this still
Lovely.
ringing in my mind. Yeah.
Lovely. So this is what it means. It is antaha asya sarvasya. It is this tattva. It is inside of me. It is outside of me. It's all pervasive. Now all we need to become is extremely. Now you just observe yourself. What happens if you're so busy, so rajasic in terms of trying to do activity one after the other. You lose the sensitivity of being able to observe what's happening in and around you. See, a lot of times you will notice when we fall sick, it is also because we have not paid attention to what's happening inside. There are indications that your body will say that you're going to fall sick. It is just that we have not paid attention so much because we've been so busy on the outside that you missed those signals and your body falls sick. Happens to all of us, right? We have missed those signals. But if you notice, you are observant constantly what you're eating, how you're eating, what you're doing, how you're talking, how you're engaging and all that. You do that, then you will notice that there are signals that the body is giving. I'm going to go unwell. I am feeling not okay. We ignore and override. The override button amikinde irukum. So as we keep pressing the override button, then the body gives it back as a sickness or disease or whatever. So all we need to do is in these conversation, try to become sensitive, try to become observant, try to become more. What I mean by refined is try to refine your mind away from objects little by little, and try to bring it to a space of Buddha talks about this. Buddha talks about dhyana as this still calm water in which even a small mosquito comes and stands on it, it will create a ripple. You will experience a ripple. So think about it, how that calmness, when within you will know when there is a thought that's coming. Like the reason use of a mosquito is because if you look at the legs of the mosquito, it's so very thin, so very tender and thin. You wouldn't know that a mosquito's leg can actually create a ripple on water, but it will create a very gentle ripple. So that's how if you observe your mind, you will know that when you go into these states of observance within you, observation rather, not observance, but observation, you will notice that you become more and more sensitive. Now it's not that you have to now react. It doesn't mean that when you become very observant, you are looking at something and somebody is coming, hey, disturb pannada, apdi illa. It's not. you're not trying to push off something, you're also observing that, you're trying to observe your environment. And that becomes a very interesting way to bring back yourself, to constantly refine your mind. The more you refine your mind in that process, you become more observant, then it is not tad dure, it is tad antike. You will start experiencing, like it said, from the Anandamaya Kosha. There are Pancha Koshas that Vedanta talks about. The Anandamaya Kosha is the closest to what is called as the Atman. And it's constantly oozing out joy, Ananda. That's why it's called Anandamaya Kosha. See, you can ஒரு துணியை எடுத்து தண்ணியில போட்டோம்னா என்ன ஆகும்? துணி will be dripping with water. Or if you dip sponge into nectar, honey, it will be dripping with nectar. So Anandamaya Kosha is not nectar, it is that sponge which is closest to nectar. And because it's so close, it's dipped in it, it is oozing out. Now all we have to do is Anandamaya, even if we try to get to that and experience that taste of it slowly, it will, there's this constant oozing that is there. And all that, the joys that we get is from there only. The joys of experience. Moda, pramoda, there are three kinds of joys that we talk about. Moda and pramoda, I think there are two. And then there is Ananda. So this Ananda is something that is oozing out without any reason. Namakulle irukku, absolutely no reason why it should ooze out. Without a reason it's oozing out. When we make our minds a little more, bring it into a state of refinement, which means less of object orientation and more of the self orientation. Hari Om Matalpaga. So that then becomes that experience. So then you have the experience of Tat Antike. Then you have the experience of Tadantarasya Sarvasya Tadu Sarvasyasya Bhahyatah. It is inside also and is also outside. So that is where we come to this particular shloka. So we'll just chant this shloka about maybe Kailash, if you're there, maybe you can chant it a couple of times and close it.
Can.
Yeah. Tadejati tannaijati.
Tadejati tannaijati.
Taddure tadvantike.
Taddure tadvantike.
Tadantarasya sarvasya.
Tadantarasya sarvasya.
Tadu sarvasyasya bhahyatah.
Tadu sarvasyasya bhahyatah.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam.
Purnamadah Purnamidam.
Purnaat Purnamudachyate.
Purnaat Purnamudachyate.
Purnasya Purnamadaya.
Purnasya Purnamadaya.
Purnameva Vasishyate.
Purnameva Vasishyate.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Kayena vacha manasendriyerva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi yatyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayami sadashivayeti samarpayami jagadambikayeti samarpayami sadgurunathayeti samarpayami. Hari Om Tat Sat.